first SKBC that I'm on the teaching side, so yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's.
And I'm Tiibi, Knight Out of the Rising Winds. This is my first time instructing at SKBC.
Awesome. Okay, before we go through and we'll get some student introductions, again, a lot of familiar faces with some of this stuff, that's okay. I need the repetition anyways. So there are two big things that I want to say. I have a philosophy on correctness, right? So we are building foundations of ways to do things strongly. That doesn't necessarily mean there won't be an instance where maybe doing something improperly wouldn't be what will allow you to accomplish a goal. So if we're thinking about a shot, right? You think about the good mechanics of a wrap shot, and you're translating from the ground up through your body and delivering your shot. You're rolling over the entire way, so you're saving your body, you're not hurting anything. But maybe in the one particular instance in a fight, all of a sudden, arming a shot is how you're going to get the kill. As long as you're minimizing that kind of stuff, no harm, no foul, because you're not going to risk injury on doing something a single time. But that is just the point, right? In every instance, I could probably think of something or some situation where whatever weird, odd thing you want to do is that breaks fundamentals in some way is probably a good solution for solving the problem that you're interested in. And it's just about understanding the risks that you're introducing with that, or like the potential harm that you could be causing in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, I don't think there are hard set rules for things. I really think it's just important to understand what is generally good for you to continue doing. Secondly, this is a class for you. We're here to get information to you that you find helpful. So even while we're preaching, anytime you have a question, just ask. You don't need to put your hand up if you feel more comfortable doing that because you don't want to interrupt or something, no problem. But if you want to interrupt, go for it, because it's good to get that kind of information out to you. So questions, welcome anytime. Everybody good? Let's do some more introductions.
I'm Dirk out of Telegore. I've been fighting for a handful of years. Basically looking to get more out of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, and that's the important part. If you have any specific topics or questions that you want to talk about, you can go over them now, or you can just, as they come in.
So we've got a lot of time. And with that said, I also cross-gamed SCA.
After the protein ball is gone.
Like they hit you in the face. I don't have a read for some of those shots. They're like, boom, and I'm like, that's how you hit me.
The introduction of why I'm here, or
name, relative experience, and what you hope to learn, or any specific questions.
Bolton. I've been fighting for
30 minutes straight
on and off 10 years.
Tar
Honestly, range control has always been my
super
worst.
fuzzy guy, like he wasn't mean about it.
The shortest on my field. Everyone's got range over me, so I've always had to work on footwork.
So I'm first one to spell
We're going to talk about methods as well.
30, too old to fight.
Takara from the Northern Lights. I've been playing for about 15 years, and I
We
can
will
be
talk a
better
little
at
bit
range
about the things that
control.
do happen over time.
Hoping to
Story of
use some
everybody.
tips here.
Range control is probably the most important aspect of it.
I'm Jais. I'm from southern Wisconsin. For range control, I think I could use some tips on how better to read when my opponent is going to move.
I'm Saf from Morva in Chicago. I'm fighting for about 10 years now at this point. I feel like I'm just kind of looking for like better vocabulary for range control so that I can break it down myself, just to like kind of collect my thoughts.
Awesome.
Kylis out of Talagore. I've been playing for approximately 10 years, and I've gotten this far on instinctive fighting, and I want to translate into more intentional, thought-focused fighting than just, I do this because this is what I've done, and I want to hit the next level with intentional fighting.
I'm Rowan out of 13 Roads. I'm fighting for this will be my 9th year now. A lot of the same stuff as Kylos, a lot of stuff is just lizard brain. This works, do this, trying to get better vocabulary on how to better express stuff with range control.
I'm Foyle. I'm from York. I've been doing this a little over 4 years, working on deliberateness with how I approach deliberateness.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so the first, most important thing is going to be coming to a common understanding what this is. So anybody have a good definition for range control? Otherwise, I got one, but I want to see what you're thinking. And if you don't, no problem. I can go straight to it.
Maintaining the space between yourself and your opponent.
Yeah, so that is, maintaining the distance would be a specific subset of range control. What we're talking about in general is the ability to manage all distance between yourself and your opponent. So it's not necessarily maintaining a space. We're going to be talking about closing. We're going to be talking about getting out of it and how to do these kinds of things effectively. Yes, managing the totality of space between you. So, in the goal for, I always like to give students a goal for a class. My goal is to provide you the tools to assess, affect, and formulate plans for controlling your range, right? Because that's going to be the most difficult thing is probably how are we going to accomplish these things? Like how am I going to maintain a range if I want to stay in mid-range? Or how am I going to get close to somebody if I'm a shorter fighter and they're a tall, lanky buck who likes to backpedal? Or if I'm a tall, lanky person, how am I going to keep that when they're pressing me and I have maybe like restricted space or something like that? Because moving backwards can be more difficult than moving forwards. Moving backwards into a pit that is enclosed in boundaries can be very difficult to maintain range and stuff like that. Okay, so first off, let's define some ranges. And then we're going to discuss some advantages and disadvantages to each of those ranges. So, anybody, this is going to be very familiar for people who just took the combat geometry class, but anybody got a good definition of what they consider close range? What is close range to somebody? Does anybody here prefer fighting close range, like just up in the grill of somebody else grinding? Cool. What is close range to you? Where does it become close range? Where does it change to something else?
I probably define it a little bit at the point where I can get to your body, probably.
Awesome. Yeah, okay, so using your sword as a reference point for something like that. Yeah.
That's actually kind of similar to how I do it. I consider it close range. When I'm close enough where I can be hitting here.
Yeah.
With that part. With minimum reach exposing myself is another way to say it. Like, I would say this is still not close range. That would be close range.
Yeah.
That's how I...
Yeah. For me, it would be a range where I feel like both people can be deadly to each other at all parts on the body, essentially, right? And an easy way for me to judge what that is can I physically touch them with my arm? If I can physically touch them with my arm, this is incredibly close. You can wrap shot everybody. Either way, this is going to oblivion, right? Everything now becomes very deadly in this range. That's close range. Then what does it become when we're talking about mid-range? Striking range? Yeah, okay, so striking range where you still have access to the body, but you're relying on the sword for that, not necessarily just being as close as possible. And another thing that I think is a key characteristic here is, I would say that ends probably around where you can fade into a range where they no longer have access to your body, right? So it's where I can hit their body and then in an instant be outside of them being able to hit my body. And then if we're talking about C range or long range, what I'm thinking about is the ability to snipe things and target extremities, not necessarily hitting their body. So their front pronounced leg, their arm if it comes out to attack me and stuff like that. Right, so things away from the body. So access to the body at long range probably just doesn't exist unless you're super tall and they're super short. Yes?
So would you say mid-range kind of ends at the point where you can no longer land a wrap on them?
Yeah, exactly. So if you were in the combat geometry class, what we talked about are those different ranges, A, B, and C, and what shots become available to you. And the idea is a good wrap shot, which is to say something that is the only reason you're throwing a wrap shot is because you're trying to get around somebody's guard, which means you're trying to break the plane, which means you're creating a triangle with your shot, which necessitates you have to be closer than your absolute maximum full extended range. If you are throwing a wrap shot mechanically and you're still ending at a plane where your sword is essentially just in a straight line, that's not hot for your body, first off. Second off, it's slower than a chop would have been. You should just throw a chop. And that's what is going to be the most effective. So what I'm saying is you can't wrap in long range, like, even if you're targeting their arm. So yeah, exactly. Like it's the range of where you can no longer effectively land a rifle. Okay, so we talked about it a little bit, but let's talk a little bit more about it. So what are some of the characteristics of close range, right? What's going on in close range? It's very deadly for everybody involved, right? Every attack is a threat to hit all targets. What are the considerations of that? So we're talking about like timing, right? How long do we want to spend in something like close range with no plan? Yeah, exactly. People will tend to get up and grind, and maybe they grind for a while, but they're probably, I hope they have a plan of what they're trying to do. But because everything is so deadly, to me that becomes something where it's a guessing game, right? You're playing casino, odds and percentages. Exactly. Because everything becomes so much more deadly. So we can talk a little bit more about that when we get into what we think about like manipulation of range. But yeah, so I would say spending an extraordinary amount of time in close range once you've gotten there. If you're not having success, I would say range control is going to help you because you should be getting out of that range when you don't meet success, unless you think the other person is like incredibly uncomfortable in fighting in that range. Right? So just as soon as your plan has failed and you're in close range, understand this is the most dangerous thing. You're going to be looking for other strategies and other ways in order to be able to get out. Okay, now let's talk about some manipulation. So, how far can I get, right? Yeah.
So like, our swords are basically the only thing that is standing.
Yep.
Maybe this is a bad example.
No, that's okay. It's an important
not as long as
consideration.
you think they are.
But yeah, just when you're sparring, fighter practice or whatever, go up against a couple of different people, different body types.
Because in some instances, there might be people that are hitting you in the shoulder and you're hitting just arm or nothing. And it's good to know.
Do you want me as an example?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. That was a much more extreme example.
Yeah, right. So ultimately what this is going to hammer home is the idea that maybe what their B range is more like your C range, because all you can hit on them are their arms.
Yeah, I can maybe, if I reach, I can get their shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so ranges vary between people, and you need to know what your opponent's range is, right? So generally this is going to be something tied to height, just because that's the way human anatomy works. Arm length gets translated by just general height of a body most of the time. Exactly, most of the time.
As we said.
Yeah. So if you're analyzing your opponent, that's one of the key things. Like, okay, is their range something that will be a problem for me where I need to be doing things in order to get the goal that I want? Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to change range. Let's go straight into talking about closing range first, right? Because that's going to be one of the most important things. So if you're a tall person and you're fighting a short person, you probably want to keep range. If you're a short person, it's going to be generally more uphill battle for you to catch somebody, right? So let's think about ways of accomplishing that goal. So if I just sit here and they're intent on maintaining range, right? And I take a shuffle step forward, they're probably just going to take a shuffle step back. What I need to do is find some way of gaining more ground than they're going to give up. Because if I don't do that, then I haven't actually closed any range, and it's going to be difficult. Now, in the footwork class, and especially in like footwork theory, we touched on a couple of these. But footwork, what are some of the ways that you have available to you to close more distance than what people normally would expect from just normal engagement where you're doing shuffle steps, right?
Gathering step.
A gathering step. So, a gathering step, you come up, you get a little extra half step because you're loaded your foot, and now you can go even farther than you normally would with your shuffle step while maintaining balance. And you can hide that pretty easily in the middle of combat, you're grinding or whatever, they don't pay attention. My feet came together, my body didn't necessarily move forward, my equipment didn't move or anything like that, and now I can explode even farther. Now I'm closer. So, doing that is going to be successful. And it's usually a generally pretty safe way of doing that too. The difficulty is you have to have at least some form of attention grabbing where they're not looking at your feet. If you're out of range typically, right, like back here, one of the things that I'm doing is just like watching their foot movement as I'm moving around in a circle or something, looking for times where maybe they're crossing their feet, and then it's like, ah, now it's time to press. So if they're watching your feet, it would be difficult to get a gather step in. But if you're in the middle of fighting and you're playing around or something like that, gather step will be a fantastic way of closing some distance and managing some range to get closer. What are some other methods? Footwork. Strictly just footwork right now.
Stepping in at an angle.
Yeah, okay, exactly. So, what do I gain when I'm stepping in at an angle instead? Just stepping off of the center line a little bit, right? So, if you're initiating the step at an angle, and they're a good fighter, what they are going to want to do is keep their orientation the same. What that means is they are probably going to have to adjust their orientation before they can move, and they're reacting to you, which means that they're going to be one step behind. They're going to be slightly slower than you. So you coming in at an angle is going to make that little amount of time allow you to then maybe move another time before they can get down on the ground or before they can start taking that. So you are moving a half measure faster than them, and you're using an angle to make them have to take more steps before they can start moving to maintain range control.
No, it's just called beating the drums. Like, that's how I remember it.
Yeah, so we can talk about that for a second too. It's not exactly range control, but it is paramount to maybe, that's not true. It is range control. It's amazingly range control. Because when is it easier to is it easier to manage range when you are leading the fight or when you are reacting to the fight? Leading, absolutely. Because of things like that. You have your half step advantage ahead of them, and then maybe you're forcing them to have to adjust their body instead. So if you can be the person leading the fight with the range control thing, you have a little bit of time in between there where you're headed. Okay, so that's a 45 and a gather step. What about some other things? Not necessarily advisable things, but they are things that can accomplish the goal. Lunge. A Hail Mary that will get you a lot more distance. So I'm here, right, and I want to be in close range. A normal shuffle step won't get me to close range, but if I lunge, I can get to close range to get a juicy butt wrap or something. Yeah, exactly. A lunge is a Hail Mary. You come really low usually because you're trying to get as much range as possible. You're exposing yourself a lot, but that'll get you a momentary, immediate close range engagement. You have to have a lot of confidence in the shot that you're going to throw, and you need to understand you're going to get punished, or there's an extremely high likelihood that you're going to get punished. Yeah, exactly. Like, perfect example would be Shion. Shion lunged a lot to throw money shots, and they were incredibly effective. Exactly. What was he doing when he was doing that? He was tabling his shield and coming way down. This opens him on the sides, but people reactionarily, if they are suddenly this tall, it's almost always going to be going for your back. So if he's using a lunge, he's getting that close range explosiveness from long B range usually, and he's getting the one shot, and that's all it takes, right? So he's defending against the counter by placing the shield high and tabling it, and he is getting the kill. What happens after that doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter because he closed the distance, and it just, the one little second. What else? So a lunge is a good example of something that's a Hail Mary. Any others? Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, varying tempo is an excellent way of managing range in general. So that doesn't even just apply for going in close. This is going to be something that we're going to hammer on a lot because it is one of the easiest ways of controlling range, is varying the tempo. People get into a pace when they're fighting, right? It's whack, 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 whack. Block strike is very much a prominent part of the sport, kind of ubiquitous now, just the concept of it. Block, strike, block, strike. That timing can be broken, and in the same way, you're thinking about timing of steps, right? Because you can't be throwing a shot as you're moving and have it be as effective. You're either going to throw yourself off balance, or it's not going to have any power or anything. So it's going to necessitate your feet are moving in the same kind of tempo as your shots are moving. That's limiting when you can move, and if you can pick that apart or alter it, it can allow you to control range. Yeah. And then anything else? Anything else we can do to close range strictly from a footwork perspective?
There's one that I like. Maybe I like doing if we're fighting at this range and I know that you're comfortable at it, what I like to do is I like to rock back and keep weight on this foot because I know that he's about to step in.
Yeah.
He wants to maintain range. As he goes to step in, since I'm loaded up, Belthil will step in, and as he's doing it, I'm going to close too. Because now he's taking a step for me to close range. And now we're both here. I'm in that close range that I want. And depending on what it is, if I see openings, I can just do that, or fight my close range or whatever I want.
Yeah. So the concept of inviting them to come in, right? We're yielding a little bit of ground, making them think, hey, we don't want to play the range game, and I'm not going to be the one chasing you. I'm comfortable, just like, hey, step back or whatever. I'm gonna keep going, and then all of a sudden you take a little step back, and then immediately close in. And you've now closed the gap in a way that they weren't expecting, because they were trying to maintain their ideal range. And they're like, well, fine, I'll chase you a little bit, it's okay. And even if it's just little adjustment steps like that, that can be all that you need to finally get in close enough to finally whack the person. Any other methods? I got one big one that I can think of too, not necessarily advisable. Yeah, go for it.
We talked about a passing step.
Yeah, not even necessarily a passing step, literally just stepping, right? So, a shuffle gets you so far. A lunge will get you so far, but it's a one-time movement because you're going to have to like reset yourself in some way, shape, or form. I guarantee you I can run at somebody back faster than they can backward step, right? Yeah. So they're shuffle stepping and we're shuffle stepping or whatever, then all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm going to chase you. I'm going to take some big steps and sacrifice everything else and be a bull rushing you. The easiest way of having success with that is, again, not just starting out with that, because what you're doing when you're bull rushing is you are opening yourself up to a lot of other things. He steps off to the side. All my momentum is still going this way because I'm 100% committed. Go for it.
One safer version of that would be starting off on the defensive foot forward and using that to step in.
Yeah, so it just depends, right? You're saying defensive foot, shield foot forward? Yeah, so doing this and then transitioning with just a single step to get a little more range. Exactly, right? So I'm not shuffling. And what I'm doing here is I'm not necessarily committing as much of like just straight running at them. It's the same concept. And the same concept will still apply. You're relying on them not paying attention to it and it being something that you're catching them off guard with, which deception is going to be a good way of controlling range as well. But so you step through, you haven't necessarily sacrificed too much in this, right? You still keep your board relatively safe guarding this side if it's sword board. Florentine would be the same thing. Whatever guard you had out here, now you're just transitioning it a little bit. Or in single, if for whatever reason you're a weirdo like me and you just don't like chasing people back, you're like, hey, look at my feet, shoulder and back and stuff like that, go for it. Just transition or fade away instead when they go for it and try to snipe their arm. But, yeah, exactly. So, you can take a single step and be relatively safe with it. You just have to be aware of how your guard is changing in the process. And exactly, that's a fantastic way of closing range when we're talking about range control. Is just going to be taking a step and set, and the safer you can be with it with those kind of methods. So make them set up. Like I love fighting shield foot forward or whatever, like shield foot, and then boom, all of a sudden, if you're comfortable fighting in both of these stances, you can gain more range than you would have if it was just a slot. So that would be what I would say is you should be comfortable fighting both sides forward. And you should work on developing that strictly because it can help you out with these other kinds of goals, right? You can now, instead of it's like, oh, I really like shield foot forward, but I'm having difficulty closing range, I have to either rely on a gather step or, you know, like setting up outside and then taking a big step to transition into the guard that I want. I'm getting extra range with my sword because this arm is now farther out in front, right? And I took a step. So I get two forms of range out of a single motion, which is really strong. and that will close, that helps a lot with that. So that is how that is discussing closing distance and getting it close. That's, everybody Gucci with that? We want to get up, practice some of this stuff, like we can do some range control stuff, and right now we'll start with no, because you brought up the example about 45s too. So we can do that. Let's get up, one person play the aggressor, one person play the defensive person, and try to stay out of range. If they get to you, let's say they can take 3 movements. If they move at you 3 times, and that means like either a shuffle or a step or something, if they shuffle at you, or if they do 3 movements and get to you and hit you with their sword, then you lose. And then it doesn't matter. If they try, and then win or fail, you flip the place. Okay? And try to experiment to see which ones of those kinds of things help you out the most. You can start at whatever range you want. I recommend starting it out of range just because it's a thrill for closing distance, right? You don't necessarily have to end in close range. It's just you want to hit them with your sword. So partner up, and we're going to be doing a couple more drills during this too, and then we can transition into switch partners.
More flat.
No, we covered that.
As I was going to say, you'll have to bring that
If I can grab a little. All right, do you want to be the aggressor?
Aggress first.
You're aggressing, I'm retreating.
First is the aggressor.
You hit me with back as much as you want. Like this isn't necessarily.
Close distance.
Right now, if I can face it, it'll run.
And if only one person is ready
Yep. The person that's closing is trying to attack, the retreat person is trying to
Yeah, we can move stuff out of the way, get whatever. You have freedom to go wherever you can find open space. Take these rapidly too. It doesn't have to be the stop in between. You can treat it like a real fight. So you're like, if you're pausing and you're using that as a method of like, I'm trying to fuck with their head or something like that, awesome. If you're pausing because you're trying to give them an opportunity to respond to something, we want to do full speed stuff because we're trying to see how we can get this effective right now in honest, like realistic combat scenarios. Okay. So I noticed you like transitioned your guard a little bit into something, and then you used that as a way of getting a step in there instead. That's fantastic. Amazing. I would say give some time in between the rounds. Yeah, instead. Yeah. So give them time in between the rounds. But what I mean is, when you're doing your 3 movements, they don't have to be paused. Like it's not like I move once and wait, and then I move again and wait. You can be as long as you're only taking 3. It's like okay, I'm shuffle, step, 3 movements. No. There's no break between your movements when you're the person doing the thing. There should be a break in between when you're switching who's doing it. Okay. With the gather steps, I noticed you tried that tactic.
I saw that and I really do want to practice it.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe this one, because I don't know if that's considered a step.
Yeah. So I would say that that's a step because you're doing something. What I would say is, and that's okay for that to be a step, right? Because you're getting something out of it.
Right.
But you don't want to be there for too long because if you're just pausing like this, and exactly, yeah. So she could stuff you. So you want that to be something that's maybe a little smoother. So it's like you're here or whatever. You're just guarding. You gather step and then immediately go into the movement. because this is a weak position
Yeah,
structurally.
I noticed that as soon as I did that, I was like,
Yeah, you're balanced here, right?
Yeah.
But you're not stable here because anybody could come up and push you from essentially like any angle because you're like a little ballerina, right? Like you're a single little point.
Yeah, they
it's
call
not
my
the good
bluff
strong.
and they just push.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to be weird with this one, right? You have to be deceptive with it. So, and you definitely don't want to be there for long because the longer you're there, the more likely it is that they're going to do something and punish you for it. So it should be a little quick deception thing where it's just like we're fighting, or whatever, and then immediately go. Cool.
Yes. I'm the aggressor, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh, that's strategic.
Yeah, part of my plan.
Yeah.
I'm so done with travel today, man.
There's too much dust.
Got it.
Like what you're doing right now is fine. Let's change the wheel up a little bit to make it like the ante on you touch them at all anymore. You've now got it. You can, chuck and dive. I'm still in a shot. You're So, same thing. Yeah, the goal of not getting touched at all becomes a lot better for trying to drill somebody and how they resist a lot. And it'll help you a lot with the other things you do, like maintaining. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Single is infinitely deadly for everybody. Yeah. Oh no, we
Because like,
can.
I was kind of going over that with them.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
So like a good example, like
Heck yeah.
45 this way, I can use you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might start moving this way already.
Yeah. Yeah. We can talk about the mechanics of that too, like why it's doing that. Okay, let's go to control the drill just a little bit for you two. Very similar thing to what I told them. If you touch their equipment or any part of them at all while you're being the aggressor, you have succeeded. So you got to stay way out of range.
Okay, we're doing that.
Goal here. Yep. So you get 3 movements to try and touch them at all. And if you can, again, you can shuck jive, you can move things out of the way. If they get to you and they touch you in the 3 moves, fantastic. If they don't, congratulations. And then go around. So it's going to be way longer range fighting than what you're used to. It's going to feel weird because you're just swinging at anything you can get your hands on. But it's going to force you to have to be way better at closing distance. So you can try some of these techniques now to see what is. Have you been talked to? Okay. You want to try? No. I want last. Okay. Okay. I would say let's try to back up and let's alter the dual. If you want to switch to single, you're going to need a lot more space.
Change it up a bit.
Wherever you want. Touch on any part of it. So it's not that. Yeah. That's okay. Likewise, dodge out of the way when they get to this final wipe or something like that. But as long as they can.
I think that did actually flip pouch.
Ouch. But yeah, and then yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna try to do it. Okay, so what happened? Yeah. Not giving Brian time to do anything. Yeah, so
I think I'm focused. Less than 3 is okay. Right?
Yeah, so now she's already on the second. He already knows.
Actually,
It is hard to read. Oh, sorry.
Ready for that. Second.
Oh my gosh. I don't know, but it leaves you covered. Get it in, you know. One other
It's something I never mess with.
that are just like straight lines that make you
Yes.
they were having some stuff coming back like, okay. That's going to help in the range. What are you doing?
I kind of feel like you're focusing a lot on that. In a way. Another way. Out of range.
Yeah.
Unless trying to go for the weapon.
Yeah. So, what do we do? Yeah.
No matter what their response is, you just have to push A or B reliably.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have
Okay. Everybody comfortable with the drill? You can finish up your one that you're doing right now, and then we can come back and talk a little bit more about some other stuff.
I limited my options to only being able to move forward like that, and in a real fight, I would have died. And that was what went through my head. I'm like, this is a suicide move.
Lateral. He's already going this way.
That's mine.
Wait, it could be if you picked it up and play with it.
Nah. You don't want this.
And not with how heavy it is.
Guard stick and a bell stick would be really confusing.
Everybody's trying. I still move on.
Clumsy than lateral offense. Yeah, thank you.
I found myself getting hung up on the number. I was like, perform 3 moves. I was getting hung up on that. About how can I stop the time, like execute on the third move. Like you start finding more success.
Yeah, exactly. If you can hit him immediately, hit him. Okay, so what are some things that people realize were working well for them, and what are some things that they realized maybe weren't working as well?
So cutting the 45s, definitely seemed to be successful on the offense.
Yeah.
Defensively, it was a little tricky a lot of times because I was losing retreat distance because of the angle.
Exactly.
It wasn't as effective. Now, a little bit of a caveat: if I was retreating away from the origin of attack, then that could be helpful.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So 45 is good for advancement. 45s for maintaining or increasing distance, probably not going to be the hottest thing that you can do. They're good in other ways, and we can talk about that a little bit too. So, yeah, 45s. Was it just consistently moving 45s? Was it going 45 into a different 45 degree or what?
A mix, yeah. There's a lot of 45 into another 45.
Yeah.
Could be very helpful.
Yep.
The 45 and then call it 45 based on their new position, so kind of a little bit of a tighter angle.
Yeah.
Those also were helpful.
Cool. Other things?
I was going to say, crescent steps into chops or stabs was much more effective than like slashes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
The big reason for that is stab is one of your maximum range moves as well, and it's fast. Stabs are really quick.
Yep.
I mean, if I want to get from point A to point B distance-wise fast, like this takes that to get there. This is just
a wrap shot takes an eternity in comparison to either of those two things. Yeah. So stabs are going to be very effective, especially for just getting to a target, right? How about you?
That half step that you were talking about?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yep.
But yeah, we found out we don't want to stay there very long.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't have good balance.
Yep. Yeah. So again, when we're talking about a stance and returning to a stance, what makes our normal neutral stance that we're talking about, right? A good neutral stance is good because it is stable, it is balanced, and it allows us to have agility in a multitude of ways. So a good stable stance, you can go that way, you can go that way, you can go 45s easily. You can rotate your defense relatively well. You have access to all kinds of shots and stuff like that, and you can generate the proper power for them. When you start to shift your stance to more of a straight line stance like that, now you're losing mobility going this way, but maybe you're gaining it going forward, which is okay, but you need to know that you're aware, like you need to be aware of the fact that if they start cutting angles, you're gonna have a difficult time keeping up. So that's, again, like the neutral stance is good. When you're going into a stance like this for a little quick gather step, what you're doing is you've now gotten rid of stability. You traded in stability for more agility because you can get a more explosive step going that way, and you've hidden it a little bit, but only for so long, right? If you come to this and you stand here for a second, you are balanced in this particular moment, but the instant somebody does anything to you, you realize you're no longer stable, and you're going to fall on your face whatever direction they come at you. So if you get stuffed in your gather step, that's going to be rough. The way you don't do that is just get through that shit as fast as possible. So it should always be like, you're here, we're fighting, we're fighting. Like, gather step, go immediately. Just use that as a springboard to go. Yeah.
I was gonna say with the gather step, could you also come up, gather step, and then just reverse the gather step? So like you gather step and then you explode backwards into it. Almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
You come up and then back into the original position.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Is that what do you have in mind for that? Are you thinking about a way of increasing range in between you and the opponent, or are you thinking about maybe like 2 steps ahead or something like that, or what?
Kind of the 2 steps ahead. So
yeah.
You get up and you do the gather step, and you've done it before to where you've gone up and then you plunged into it.
Yeah.
But then you go to do the same thing, and then you're just coming back because they're expecting to step into you.
Yeah.
So very similar on that.
Yeah.
So I guess the 2 steps ahead, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we can use this, the gather step that we're talking about, right? This can be a launch pad for a bunch of different things. You can use it, you can gather, that's another half step that you have for going forward, very effective. You can use this to transition into a two-part plan for effectively baiting somebody into taking that step forward, right? So you're here, you go into the gather step. If they're paying attention and they see you do this, they're going to be like, oh, that's a weak stance. I'm going to go in on him. You go back and then you go in immediately. So it's effectively doing what Magnus is talking about, right? Where like you relinquish a little bit of range and then you come in. What did we introduce with this gather step? We introduced a vulnerability that hopefully somebody picked up on. So they're like, oh, he's weak now. Stance is bad. I'm going to push in this instance. From this step, you can still explode backwards too. Exactly. And then you can explode forwards, and now you're even closer than they were originally anticipated. So that can be used in a way to retreat unexpectedly for them, and as a way to close distance by playing a long game, right, where you're baiting them into thinking you're weak, you're relinquishing distance, and then you're closing it more than they thought because they have now done some work for you too.
One thing with a gather step, if your goal is still to push into the person and they see you and they're like, oh, I'm going to counter push, it still is relatively easy to get out of because you can just go here and say, okay, I'm ready. So there isn't too much risk if they catch you off guard unless they fake you out of your own shoes and you're right here and they're already on top of you. But if you see that aggression start and you want them to get nice and close and you don't want to back up, you can easily just break right into their standard fighting stance and because they're doing your goal for you, right? Like if they're going to aggress in real hard, cool, let them. That's where you want to be. Yeah. If that's where you want to be, I should say.
Yeah. Let's talk about, so now we're not talking just footwork. We touched on it a little bit with 45s, but I think 45 is good enough on its own to be its own discussion because it's some lateral movement. Let's talk about using some lateral movement for range control in general too. So Magnus, get up over there, or no, get up over there. Both of you two are going to do this. We're spiraling. So normally, if people want to maintain a certain distance, what they're going to do is just like probably match the kind of rotation that you're doing. That would be a good, strong thing to do. Exactly. So they're rotating. That space in between is staying relatively the same. Everybody's comfy. What you can do, if you want to close some distance, is you can slowly rotate in more towards them. So if you start taking, a little bit tighter spiral. And a lot of times people won't notice that so much. You're sneaky. Yeah, it's sneaky because they're paying attention to the lateral movement. All you need is like an extra little, half a sword length or something like that, and boom, maybe that's all that gives you a solid wrap shot or a chop or something, or reaching their body, whereas before it was only arms in the equation. So, talking about like trying to close distance, are you using lateral movement very much when you're doing that? Or are you trying to approach on just a single vector, right? So those are considerations. If you're having difficulty and you're finding people reluctant, start throwing in a lot more circles into it. Be patient, use some patience to go there. Just maintain that distance for a little bit, a few steps or whatever, and then start slowly coming in a little bit more with each one of those steps until you're where you want to be. Eventually they will pick up on it. If you started off in no man's land and then all of a sudden you're here, they're probably going to pick up before you get there. But it's still very deceptive. So again, using some lateral movement to get that. What are some other methods that we can use for like faking people, I suppose, for the goals of range control? Or anything,
just changing step.
Yeah, yep. Changing the stance.
One thing I really like to do here and there, I try it on Belthil a lot because Belthil's a jackrabbit who likes to be out there. Belthil's a range fighter. I'm less of a range fighter. So I know that if I'm going to engage Belthil right here, I'm likely going to die. And I need to do things that make Belthil get closer to me or get close to him without doing it. So I know that if I work a 45 on Belthil, he is likely to move back that way and just maintain his distance. So a good way that I have found that can work on people that like to maintain that far range and if you want to get closer is you start working those 45s and you get them into that habit of moving out that way. And then what you can do is it's just a body thing really. You do a half step this way and they'll start to move and then you're already here and now they've already closed that distance for you because they're all both working at 45 at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's just a slight dip of your body, and you can even half step in. Just, you're like, oh look, I'm going 45. Not a lot of weight is on this foot. Most of it's still right here. You can see my heel is up and ready to go. And then I just dive back that way.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to close distance against people who really like to keep that far distance or snipe it in. That's one that I found works out pretty well.
Bringing the pattern of like essentially the block strike. The block strike is the same thing but with footwork.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly point made. So why is this working? Why does block strike work, right? It's because it's a regimented thing. You know, like, I'm striking like this, and they're blocking, and they're responding to just the chop that you're throwing or something like that, right? Or whatever the shot is, they have a regimented response for it. Same thing that we can sell in our footwork too, right? This isn't just limited to our weapons. If I'm doing something like getting lower and going this way, to me, that is selling that I'm going to start going that way, right? Like the person looking at me is probably thinking, oh my gosh, they're moving that way. So I'm going to do my counter rotation, but they haven't committed anything. They're using their body to fake, but their footwork is going to do something in particular, and then doing something else off of that, and that's also getting them into the range. So body faking and footwork and closing distance and being deceptive go hand in hand because of what we're selling with our body. And a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm selling a shot or something like that. It could be completely unrelated to a shot. It could be threatening in a different way, just related to your range, right? Because if you're suddenly faking that you're going to be closer in range, they're going to get scared, they're going to do their backup routine or whatever, and you can take advantage of those reactions. Yeah?
What kind of things are really useful when fighting?
Yes. Heck yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, line fighting, not something I do very much. Amazing point that I never would have thought of myself.
Another thing is, it's okay to be stoic. Like bird fighting, I know that you like to fight right around here, you know, throw stuff right here to get to me. It's okay to be stoic and to say, all right, I'm going to let him come in. You don't have to be the person to press or go first, because if you're waiting for that, now it can become a, all right, I'm going to stay here, do that, now you're there, now I can close. So sometimes you don't have to be the first to move to still control everything. There is power sometimes in being just stoic and waiting it out. Because if they know that you're always going to be the first one to move, that's where predictability comes in. And that, as you fight people more and more at the same time, they'll start to get that.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about the next concept in range control. Who here likes to just get into a specific range and just maintain that exact range? Yeah. Why? What range is that first off?
About B range.
B range? Yeah. Mid-range fighter. I love this shit.
Also B range.
Exactly.
I like it because it's where I'm most comfortable with my shots.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. B range is amazing to me because I feel like I can block stuff and I can dip out of range if I want to, but I still have access to all of the juiciest things that I really like to hit. Shoulders, hips, etc. Like arm sniping is fun, and I like to play range games a lot just because I don't like getting closed on. But B range and maintaining B range in the middle of a shitstorm is probably my favorite thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, it allows you to also still see your opponent and not be caught up in what is there doing that I can't see.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It becomes very, very good for faking and stuff like that too, because then you can transition into close range for a split second. Yeah, so anyways, maintaining the range control. Anybody else have any desires to maintain a different range that they really try to strive for that isn't B range?
I mean, I would say in primary B, but I like to float in C sometimes for sure.
Yeah, so that's, a little bit of maintaining, a little bit of retreating stuff, yeah.
Sometimes at the very edge of long range where they can't quite hit my body.
Okay, so we're talking about a little bit of a range discrepancy or something there and like trying to maintain floating in between B and C range.
I'm a flow fighter, I fight boards, I don't like getting stabbed.
Yeah, exactly, so.
Like between B and A.
Yeah.
That's like step-in phase.
Yeah.
Getting close, and then within bell rules, like the shield manipulation and body, like manipulation
becomes more prevalent. Yeah, so you're close enough to be able to do that kind of stuff and get openings.
Yeah.
And you're still not just like on top of each other where you're going to get striped immediately.
Yeah, like kind of boxing range. Like
Yeah.
you can get up and down and around them. Yeah.
You ever had an opportunity working with Sane? He doesn't do much anymore, but he's a Florentine fighter. Big red head, tall, wheelie, huge bear of a man. He is all about boxing range, and his Florentine fighting is strictly just essentially boxing. He loves that stuff. He'd be amazing to talk with if that's what you're really into. He nerds out about that stuff a lot, but it's, yeah. You're the second person that I've ever met that enjoys fighting and describing the boxing range, essentially. So it's really cool. Okay, so what we know about range, control, and closing, we can use to our advantage for maintaining distance as well, right? So what were the things that we discovered were successful with closing range? It's going to be that little half gather step. It's going to be going off 45s and changing the trajectory. So if we're trying to maintain a range, maybe we should do this. We're gonna scrap this for a second. We're gonna go into how do we increase range between people, because you're gonna need both of these concepts if you want to maintain a particular range. So instead, keep all of this stuff in your mind. We're moving on to increasing range between yourself and your opponent. So, what is one of the shortcomings of trying to increase your range, almost unilaterally?
Going backwards, so it's slower.
You're going backwards, so it's slower. Others?
Disadvantages of increasing range.
Give me an example.
I was going to say you're losing options on your opponent.
Yeah, okay. Because you're reacting and because they're potentially changing that equation by throwing in 45s, you may be losing options if you want to gain range on them. Because you're going to have to just do something else to increase the distance and give up something in return. Or maybe you're just sitting there in B range or in A range, and what you're giving up by retreating is now I can't wrap shot it. So you have to have a goal for why you're keeping and increasing that range, and it's going to cost you some stuff. So yeah, the two biggest things are, unless, and hell, let's even talk about the others, because I will absolutely do it. Have done it. I will mess up and find myself in a range that I really don't want to be in, and I know that just backing up or sliding or backpedaling isn't going to be enough. I literally will turn and run away and get a couple of steps. What is bad about that? My whole back is exposed, but I'm gaining the same advantages that I would have with steps, which I don't know, you two had prime examples of this, where steps were incredibly successful at closing range. The same applies for when I'm turning and running away from my opponent, because they probably aren't going to be down with taking steps, because they're not going to be used to somebody exposing their back and literally running the other direction. So I can get 2 steps on somebody and then turn around, and now I'm still at long range. It's very surprising. Yeah, then again, like, nobody does that, but you can. So yeah, turning and running gets me steps, exposes my back. Backing up straight in a line is going to be slower than what they can go forward. Getting aggressed on at an angle is going to necessitate I'm either giving up a defensive posture in some way, shape, or form to try and maintain that distance and just forget about the fact that they went off at an angle. So I'm probably opening myself up to an immediate attack in some way, shape, or form, but I'm trying to maintain my distance and increase it, like, hopefully. And then, yeah, like, reorienting is going to be a lot more active for you if you're trying to increase the range in between yourself, because you're probably, unless you're going to try and take the initiative of increasing range, which is okay, like, you can do that, right? You can try to beat the fight when you're retreating. It will just be harder because of the first aspect, which is they move faster forward and you move faster back. So, what are some effective ways of increasing the range? What are some effective ways of increasing range against people?
More step backward.
Yeah, exactly. So, you can try to make them uncomfortable or feel threatened in some way so that their range goes back. The same thing, where in other ways we are trying to invite them to take a step forward to do some work for us and then go in. We can, the opposite will apply, right? You can go and try to do something to threaten them, and then they're like, oh no, I gotta get away, and you're like, no, I gotta get away. Now you have increased range, right?
Like deceptive footwork, kind of.
Go
so
for
like
it.
you have,
This is infinitely more difficult, but it's absolutely true.
well, if you have like a punch shield, you can project and then pull forward.
Yes, yes, yeah, sick. Either of you two have punch shields? Nope, I got it. So we're using our equipment to create an illusion now, but it still applies for footwork. So I'm out here. If I'm here, my shield is still at the same distance, right? So maybe when we're fighting, I let my shield come back, and they're reaching for me, yeah. And then this will increase range for me, and they probably aren't going to follow up with footwork because the shield is still in the way, right? So my shield, like using the deception of my shield, I can gain this extra distance while still probably keeping the fight the same distance. Florentine, that'll be way more difficult with because you're going to have to extend and protect your guard. You're probably going to get striped on the arm as soon as you start doing that.
Kind of touch what you said, like, or one of them said it.
Yeah.
So like throwing some hot shots as you're retreating.
Yep, yeah, exactly. Clearing the lane is going to be an easy way of getting some distance. Yeah, fadeaway shots are going to be phenomenal for being able to increase your range because people are going to be distracted at the thing that is dangerous. That directly goes back to, in some way, shape, or form, threatening them. So they're either planting their feet or they're moving the opposite direction. You get to increase your range.
Especially if people need it by doing that big sword move forward and like this. You know,
Yeah.
They do this and they expose that hip. You know, if you want to maintain range, I step in. And now, if I'm aware of that, I might start thinking twice about how hard I want to close, or now I have to set up defenses. And if I'm setting up defense and not going on that him, now he's going to back up for free because I'm too worried about his hip.
Yeah. So, what is one of the things that is paramount to somebody closing range on you? If they want to close, they have to be offensive about it, right? It's really hard to slide into range, which means that as soon as you put somebody on the defensive in some way, shape, or form, it's easier for you to extend your range instead. Any other methods people can think of that would be maybe stronger? Not strong as in not turning and running and exposing your back. Not necessarily stronger than what we've already talked about that are good methods for dealing with this.
Try not to mess, but I'll do like a little kind of like a hop back.
Yeah, sure. Hopping back is fine. Hopping back will come with the risk of potentially, like, again, like a step, right? So hop back, boom. I'm into a good stance. Sure, no harm, no foul there. You're taking a step, so you're committing to it. But I would say that if your goal is increasing your range, you probably have a reason for that. So losing other forms of movement isn't necessarily going to be the worst thing in the world, especially if you're in a range where a fight is happening, so their feet are tied up or something like that. It's explosiveness. The keys with being able to increase your range are that it is more difficult in that you have to be more aware of what your opponent is doing, and you have to find some way of tying them up or getting them to retreat in order to get your range back. Because otherwise, all you're dealing with is the fact that you're both at an equal opportunity of doing the same kinds of movements, but they're going to be going faster and farther than you because they're going forward and you're going backwards. So it will be infinitely more difficult to keep your range if somebody is already in it and they are threatening to you. It'll be very deadly. You'll have to work on it. Getting them, like if you start at super long range or something like that, then it becomes a little different. But yeah, this is assuming like you're trying to increase range, which means you're probably not out of range already. Okay, so now we have methods for increasing our range and for closing our range. That allows us to do what? It's the thing that we were just talking about. You can maintain range because you're controlling how close you are to something or how far you are from something. So with those same methods, if you're looking to maintain a range, you know, and it's like, okay, they're trying to fade away from you, you just use a closing method in order to get closer to them. If they are using something and they're trying, you want to extend your range because they're getting too close, now you have some methods for extending that range and getting back and maintaining a constant range. What are some other considerations for maintaining range? Other than just, we're talking like lateral movement or maybe like moving 45s and stuff like that.
Posturing, like putting your sword up in their grill.
Yeah, sure. Yep. You can use that. That's a good way of helping to maintain range. It also is a good method for being aware of where you are in the range space in general, is always experimenting. So a lot of times, you can do some information seeking. This is going a little bit beyond just range control, but it helps because you're using this as a way of identifying things, right? So I'm out here and I'm like, I don't know how good, like how far I could stab, so I'm just gonna throw a little stab out there, like boom, stab. Okay, it's like, okay, I know for sure I made solid contact on that shield. I could probably get like an extra inch or so past it, but maybe that's not quite enough. So maybe this isn't quite the long range that I want to be in. I want to be a little closer so I can hit it. So I did some information seeking. I now know that I need to come in a little bit closer for my range if I want to start opening up shots for other things, right? So these kinds of exploratory things can help inform your own range. Go for it.
That also really disrupting a person with that first like gather stuff, smack you in the hand, reset your hand to like, oh, I need to stop you there.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So one thing that you can do, it's also a hiding range thing if they're doing those exploratory things. I don't even know if you saw it. If you stabbed anything, I just did a little step forward as he stabbed. And now he knows that he wants to get a little closer, and I actually just took that half step forward, and it's that whole two people working closer thing too.
Yeah.
And if he didn't recognize it, or you know, if they don't see it when he stabs, I just do a little bit in. It's just that little bit closer if you're a person who wants to get in or closer.
Yeah, so again, people are paying attention to multiple things at once, right? And footwork is usually one of the things that will fall off the quickest in an engagement or something like that, just because it goes to shit really fast, and they get caught up paying attention to all of the other information they have, right? And this is a lot of information to pay attention to, body fakes, sword fakes, etc. There's a lot going on, so footwork kind of lapses, and that's why a lot of people just have bad footwork, and why footwork is so important. So, again, anything that you can do while any of this kind of stuff is going on, or you're fighting or whatever, just little tiny steps is going to be changing that equation a lot. You can use that as opportunities to fade, gain space, etc., stuff like that. So just be trying to think about the cadence of your shots is a good way of tying up things. You can use that either offensively or defensively, because they're probably going to be like, as soon as, if we're out of range and we're not doing anything and somebody's like, cool, fantastic, I don't care. If we're in range or whatever and my shield gets hit, I'm like, there's a pause there for a second. It's like, oh, what happened? I'm in range. And you still have an opportunity to take another step. You can do either way, forward or backward. So hitting stuff, getting other parts of your game involved helps with range control. Who wants to do a drill for maintaining range? Yeah, so it's going to be very simple. I think instructors should get involved. I think we try to change the range on you, and you do what you need to maintain the range. You pick a starting range, we're going to go out and we're going to do certain things, and it's going to be, yeah, exactly. We want to see you kind of react to this. And the goal is to, again, like kind of identify the patterns that we saw with the closing distance, but what you're trying to do is maintain range. Now, there's one other thing that we can talk about that is good for maybe maintaining range, right? So let's talk some lateral movement. If somebody comes in this way, you don't necessarily have to back up away from them at an equal 45 in order to maintain that range, right? You can counter step the other direction and you still maintain the range. You're just going to end up having to reorient yourself afterwards, but that's not necessarily bad because they're going to have to reorient on you going the opposite direction. So they come at a 45, I go at a 45, so you 4 years. Right? So range has stayed basically the same, and they lost out on something. There's just more time involved in resetting yourself up, but the goal is hopefully that they are too. So if you see an instructor come in and try to advance on you on a 45, you have options available. Retreat in the opposite direction or cut to the side the opposite way. Cool? All right, so there are only 3 of us. Go ahead and line up. We'll go to some other places. The reason I don't want to do everybody at once is because this is going to be intensive. Maintaining range necessitates like a good amount of room necessary, more so than even just good close. And then I will take somebody. We'll go over here first. We'll work for a solid 30 seconds. And I'm going to rotate. We'll talk a little bit about what I think you're doing well for range control and what I think will help out. And again, the goal with this is to maintain the range distance that you start yourselves out at, because if we can maintain range in a plethora of situations of me either moving, of us moving in and out in a different angle, then you have a really good grasp. Alright, let's bring it back in. Bring it back in. Maybe I'll slightly more forward. You went horizontally to match me, and then you realized at the last second you went back a little bit. Be careful with that. You have to like reading a horizontal movement that is just slightly more going a certain direction. It's going to be very difficult because again, I'm kind of doing like the deception of like we're going sideways, except I'm going slightly in at a 45. And if things change and stuff, it doesn't appear to. I would say paying attention, the vertical range is very good. Paying attention to when we're doing lateral movements, you're doing both counter steps and matching steps, which is fantastic. It's a good repertoire to have.
That makes me feel pretty comfortable at that range. It's like really, when they're getting closer, is when I struggle more. Like getting that, like making those hard, like, you know, you press here, and I need to make sure that I'm like really stepping out as opposed to just a little bit out. I need to really fucking like.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, right? When somebody takes a big hard step, you're going to have to match it, and in retreating fashion, it's going to be even more difficult because of, you know, like legs. Like knees go that way, knees going backwards. It's going to be even more extreme of a step in order to get back and maintain the position.
It's like lightning back also.
Exactly, yeah. Barracks is a fantastic opponent for range. Yeah, absolutely. Woo. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Heck yeah. Okay. So we're gonna maintain this range.
Not to go back.
He got a little close to it that one time. I'm like, that would be really sad.
Yeah, I know. There's tons of sticks.
But if it was me, if it wasn't me,
Exactly.
The thing, the thing that I'm noticing the most with you is when I'm having the most success in changing that range, anytime I'm taking a step I feel like I'm getting closer than the initial range of the campaign. When I was taking steps inches backwards, I was having a lot of success being more smooth. Otherwise, really solid. So I would say you're not necessarily going to have to take a step yourself to maintain the range, but you might have to throw in angles into your movements in order to maintain that range. Okay. Okay, what range do you want? Whatever range you go. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so again, we're going to go. And I got caught on. Go back to Tiibi a little bit more. Sorry.
You're good. It was empty.
At least it wasn't the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my phone anyways. I'd be upset at myself. So, what I'm noticing is when your reads are good, you're doing a good job of maintaining it. The difficulty is coming in, it's not even necessarily deceptive, but it is maintaining an intent by movement that is necessarily like, that's going to be the most difficult part of all racing. So, like, being able to recognize that somebody else is doing in your following. If you are trying to manage the distance, you will essentially always be following, which means that you're going to have to be very, very good at recognizing the type of movements that are going on in order to maintain that. So you are relinquishing the lucidity in order to hopefully be able to maintain your range. So I would say your footwork is good. You're taking yourself off balance a little bit. That could also be from like the ground, the rolled ankle, or whatever. There's so many things involved with that. What I would say is try to work based on watching their and their center of mass, see what it's they might body fake that's not going to be nearly as common as mistake, so it's not going to be something that I want you to focus on. Focus on trying to make your opponents yeah. Anybody else? If you haven't gone, let me know. If you want to go again, I'm happy to. Otherwise, no problem. Yeah. How much time do we have for this? Because I want to do
2:21.
2:21. Oh yeah, we got 9 minutes. We can do a couple more people. Singles. Let's go. Get to the range that you want.
Look how small this is. Not really. Just one of those looks. Oh yeah, no, not me.
So the thing that I had the most success with changing the range these times where I was darting over to this particular side in general. Right. So you like to fight short foot forward a lot?
Yeah. Like I am predominantly like 98% of the time short foot forward.
Yep. Yeah, and that's going to be, so that makes sense because when you're sword foot forward, this is one of the more awkward movements that you have to make. It's going to decide and then the angle of that is going to be very close, right? So I would say you don't have to worry about like changing stance or anything necessarily. Work on getting more comfortable making those types of movements with not forward foot, foot, and you'll be able to do a really good job of maintaining.
I did notice, like, as I started switching up
yeah,
I felt like I had a little bit better of it.
Absolutely.
When you did make those changes,
yep.
I felt like it was a little better.
Yep, yeah.
It's just
exactly, yep.
So like, I'm just so used to this is how I stand.
Yep.
Like, doing this felt really awkward.
It does, and it will, yeah. So, as fighters in general, you're always going to have a preference, right? You're always going to want to go with a particular stance. That's always going to be your fallback. And when you're like pressured in situations, either a tournament, and you know it goes back to monkey brain, and you're not thinking about things, or you're just really tired. Those are going to be the two times that you regress back to whatever is just your default state, essentially. So being able to do a lot of work over time to alter your default state is the only way that you're going to conquer that and make those kinds of improvements to where even when you go back to monkey brain, even when you go back to being lazy, you still maintain these other things. So drilling stuff like that, even if it's not what you're interested in doing necessarily, like I don't like fighting Florentine, but I have fought a ton of Florentine, and I'll continue to go out and measure competent and stuff like that because it is important for my game. Same thing here. You might not fight shield foot forward very much, and in single, like, again, who the hell is going to fight?
I don't typically fight with a board. Like, if I can avoid taking a board, I avoid taking a board.
Yeah. So, exactly. So this is going to be really weird for single, but it still might help you when it comes to the concept of range control. And again, like, you're sacrificing what feels like your guard, but maybe if you're maintaining the range control that you're after, maybe that's an okay sacrifice, right? Because now you have other things available to you, like a step to close distance a lot faster and stuff like that. So you can take that and alter your game a little bit, and even if it feels like it's wrong, in specific instances when you get comfortable with it and you learn how to use it effectively, it can actually be used. Right.
Do you have any 2 cents on how to read when, like, 45 is more relevant?
As opposed to the alternative of just matching? Yeah. So it would be more advantageous to do something like that when you are looking to turn their movement into an opportunity for yourself, right? So either if I'm thinking about maintaining distance and cutting at the same 45 with them, nothing has changed. If I'm thinking about maintaining distance and cutting the opposite 45 with them, things are different now, right? So we're both here, right? I'm gonna go 45 this way, you go 45 that way, all of a sudden, yeah, exactly. So I'm moving this way, you have moved and reoriented yourself. Now you have more openings than what I have because you planned for it. You were like, hey, I noticed the 45 that they were coming in at, they're used to either matching or like getting stuffed or something like that. I cut off on the opposite direction and reoriented faster than they do because I was planning ahead for that and I recognized the footwork game. I have different options available now in their stuff. Make sense? Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Alright, so if you took Belthil's combat geometry class, this might be, well not might, it'll be a repeat for you, but I think it's still a very important thing for range control. So, this is when you're talking about max ranges. So right here, I can hit Belthil in the shoulder or get close. As I go down though, you'll notice that my range decreases. I have a maximum range, which is usually direct line from my shoulder. In order to change range, if I want to hit Belthil from here, all I need to do is drop, and suddenly my range increased to hit his hip. If I stand back up, I'm just missing him, and now I'm hitting him. So these are micro adjustments for maximum range, but I still think it's a very important thing that your range is a sphere around you, and the longest point is going to be here, and it's just going to get shorter whether you go this way or this way. You have to be very aware of it. Yeah. So just be very aware of it, and the best way to change it is utilizing your legs, use your quads, use good body mechanics, and get that proper range to hit where you need to. That was the last kind of thought I had on it.
Yeah, it's a sphere. It's a big sphere. You have to envision the sphere, and they have to be, the target that you're interested in hitting has to be inside of that sphere. And let's talk about other considerations for that too, right? So from that same exact class of combat geometry, we know that throwing a wrap shot creates a triangle, and a triangle is not my straight line anymore. It necessitates me being closer. My sphere is smaller, meaning I'm going to probably have to use some kind of range control. If I'm out here and we're comfortable fighting here, I'm going to have to do some kind of footwork to then close that distance so now my sphere is encompassing that, right? So same thing, range control. That is absolutely range control. It's just using it as an offensive tool for visualizing, getting your sphere inside of it. But it all comes down to range control, essentially, and being comfortable with being mobile on your feet in order to get to places. Because what's the easiest way to not get killed? Don't be there. Don't be there. Yeah, it's a great art. It is a great art. Fantastic art. Anybody have any other specific questions they're interested in getting answered or anything like that? Sweet.
Do y'all feel like you learned something? All good?
Cool. Yeah, sweet. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
We'll let you go early.